So seeing Nick Zammit from NZ Woodworking make all his pencil pieces kind of inspired me to try it myself. This is the second one I've done. The first one, I left all the pencil straight and I cast it onto a piece of wood on the bottom. But I thought I'd try just have a go at cutting pencils, put them in the casting material and just see how it comes out. So this is cast through and through. There are a few areas where you can see light through. I tried to put a lot of pencils in there just to try to get a lot of the color out. A couple things that I learned though, it's a slow setting epoxy and there's a lot of air bubbles in it. I don't have a pressure pot yet. I'm going to be getting one though, because next time I cast something we'll be in a pressure pot. So there's a lot of air bubbles trapped in here, but it doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty cool. So stay tuned, this is how I made it. Thank you. So when searching for a canister to use that would be the right size and shape for the pencil pot, I actually found this popcorn container. And so it had a threaded on top. I cut the top ring off and cleaned it all out and everything. And it's perfect shape, perfect height, perfect size around for the pencil pot. And of course, I have to make more, and I was really kind of hoping I would be able to reuse this canister, but you know, as you can see, it took a long time to get the plastic peeled off. It ended up coming off in little pieces. I finally got a couple good size strips off of it, and it's not like it really adhered itself to the mold at all. It just would not move, would not flex. So the search is on for another container. I think I found a couple. There's a couple containers I've found that will probably work better than this. They're a little bit different type of plastic, and they're a little more flexible. The one thing I also did was the ones I'm going to try next they have a slight taper to them. So I think that'll help a lot, you know, the next time I cast it. But this thing was just nuts trying to get it out of there. So I'm going to have to glue it to a back plate, something like this. So I'm going to get the bottom flat, get this prepped, and throw it on the lathe. See what it looks like. So here you can see some of the air bubbles that were left in it. I did cut that top ring off, got rid of that. A few passes on this back plate, you know, just to square it off. Prep it for gluing on the pencil pot. One of the things I use here is this 2x4. I just ran that through the planer. It's just a hunk of 2x4 run through the planer. I've got 80 grit sandpaper double side taped onto the other side, and then 120 on the side there that you can see. Just give myself a reference on the back plate here, just to kind of a references to the diameter of the pencil pot, so I kind of know where to put the glue and where that pot's going to sit once I get it glued on. So here, just firing up the sander, getting it flat. Try to keep it as square as I can. I want the bottom as square as I can to the side, so that it will glue on to the back plate and, you know, have as least little bit of wobble as possible. Right there, just cleaning up the end a little bit and making a few passes along the outside. See what it looks like. This epoxy is a mess. You can see it coming off in strings. I was wearing a coat there after a while, and you'll see that later on. But it can be a mess. Wood, you know, the wood chips catch on you and they fly off, but this stuff just kind of hangs there. So it is a mess. And just trying to clean off that little end divot, trying to find my core that's in the middle of it there. I've got that strange little vibration coming, that noise you're hearing. I think it's that speed display that sits on top of the cover. I'm going to have to put a piece of rubber underneath it or something, see if I can isolate that a little bit. But I checked everything out. I don't see anything or any other spot it might be coming from. So when I cast this, I made a stack of these. So I was looking for the end, because I want to see first off how far off center it went. It floated. Pencil pieces floated, the core floated. So I put 6 of these together, glued them together, and I cast it in the middle of this. I used MDF because it turns away easy. You know, it was fairly inexpensive. I had a bunch of scraps, so I used a bunch of MDF. It's a little off center, but I think my walls are still going to be plenty thick enough. I got a couple air bubbles down through here. They went fairly deep. You know, we'll keep going on it. Maybe get that air bubble out. We'll see. Get the core out of it. I want to see how far down I go. I know Nick at NZ Woodworking does a lot of this stuff. He glues this to wood all the time. I'm a little nervous about it. I got a face mask and stuff, but so I'm not too bad off it. But I'm going to pull the center up when I can and do some more of the outside. See how close I can get with that air bubble. Get it round and see what happens. Here I have the center up there, but I didn't even bring it into contact with the piece. I never had a problem with it vibrating or anything. You know, it seems to have held on very good, and actually it turns out it did. Once I parted the thing off, you know, I found that the board was glued to that epoxy just fine. You know, I don't think I'd have an issue with gluing blocks of wood onto this type of epoxy. You know, it seemed to have worked out pretty well. So I ended up using 2 or 3 different carbide tools on the outside here. What I've got there is that one of those small pen sets from Rockler. I use those things for everything. I've used them for more other different jobs than I have for pens. But I think I've got a carbide tip or 2 that's getting kind of dull. And there's a layer of epoxy falling off of me from cleaning up this outside of this thing. Now, one thing I noticed when I was turning this is I never lost any of those leads. I don't know if it's because I had them cut short or what, but when I was turning the straight pencils, I had leads come out quite a bit, and I covered it with thin CA glue, you know, time after time. I would cover it and then turn a little bit and coat it and turn a little bit. And I would lost a couple pieces of lead out of that one. But this one I hadn't lost any of the lead at all. I don't know if I was just getting lucky or if it's just the fact that they are shorter pieces. All of them are at angles. I don't think there's any of them that are straight up and down. So that might be the reason. So here I'm just about to the bottom of that MDF core. Just a few more final light passes on the inside. And I'll do a couple passes on the outside here, just on this rim. Round that over. One thing I did is I made up some small amounts of epoxy and I brushed it on the outside and I brushed some on the inside. And I'll leave it like that on the inside with that extra coat of epoxy. The outside I wanted to clean up some of the smaller air bubbles and the 2 larger ones, and they're pretty much filled up. The smaller ones you can't really see anymore. The 2 bigger ones are just a little noticeable on the finished product. I did sand it. I did smear some of the colors through So I did clean it up a little bit more with the carbide cutter. Ended up putting a finish of CA glue and then some wipe on poly. It actually shined it up pretty good. So after parting it off, I got it in my cold jaw set. Now I'm running about 500 RPMs, and with the length of this thing, I've really got to be careful. You should work from the outside towards the center, but I got a little too aggressive here, and on one of the pull strokes here, you'll see what happens here in a second. So fortunately, it didn't go bouncing across the shop floor or anything. Bringing the tailstock up to support it, I'm able to be a little bit more aggressive on getting that, getting the bottom shaped. When I parted this off, I left it high in the center, and I don't want that. I want it to sit on the outside rim. So, I was able to get in a little more aggressive and get that shape that I wanted on the bottom now that it's supported. While I was in the local home store here, I found an LED light on a flexible arm, and I ended up bolting a magnet to the base of it, and it works great for lighting up my pieces and what I'm working on. But I see it really washes out my hands in the end of the piece, so in the future I'll have to make sure I pay a little closer attention to where I put it. I'm getting real close to having the end of it shaped the way I wanted. It took a little bit to get that, get that concave. So now with the tailstock pulled away, I can work on getting that little point in the center cleaned up. I know there's really not much to do on the bottom anymore now. I can get that point taken out of there, right there on the center. Of course, I don't want to pop it out of these coal jaws again. And now after a couple more light passes on the bottom, I'll get some wipe on poly on it and get it finished up. And actually by now it's on my daughter's desk in her dorm room at college full of pens and pencils. So she's enjoying it. Once again, if you haven't checked out Nick Zamet at NZ Woodworking, please do. He's got a lot of great projects on there, and he was a big inspiration for this one. Here is the final piece, all finished. Thank you for watching.